What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Free Flow Friday, a time-efficient episode geared towards popular topics, current events, and the latest and greatest within health, fitness, and mindset. Without further ado, it's always a pleasure to introduce Invictus founder, CJ Martin. What's up, man?
Hey, buddy. Welcome back from Minnesota.
Thank you. And, with that being said, we've got quite a few things that I'd love to discuss with you today. And Granite Games just concluded, which was incredibly exciting for our community. What were your thoughts after observing a very fun-filled, exciting, exuberant weekend out in Minnesota?
Oh man, it was awesome to watch. We got the result that we wanted, right? Team Invictus ended up coming in first. Even better, they had a little bit of adversity, just some judging issues and those happen in competition. And I think that was what I thought was probably the best thing is they got some adversity. They responded by keeping their cool and just keep moving. And even in the events that it was most pronounced, they still got a second place finish. And so that's what you want to see. You want to see a team that executes their game plan, isn't, rattled when they get thrown off of the game plan, and just keeps moving forward. So it was really cool to see them. Super stoked for them. That team has just bonded so well. We have such good characters on that team, such good personalities that really get along. It was just really cool to see them get to show it on that stage. A little bummed for Unconquerable because, we didn't expect them to make the games going in. And frankly, Eric Carmody is about to have, his wife's about to have a baby, and it would have been really complicated had they made games. But they were so close. It was just for a couple of small errors on day one, and maybe one on day 2 or 3. They're in there, and so it was cool to see them, and hopefully that lights a fire because I think some of those athletes have a really promising future.
Yeah, you summed that up very, very well. Incredible to see Team Invictus on top of the podium and really execute almost better than they did in practice, which was very cool. Just want to take a brief moment to give a huge shout out to not just you, but our entire Invictus athlete crew. Hunter and Holden have done just an absolutely amazing job. It's very, very cool to see those guys step up to the plate. Especially at a time like this. You mentioned, Team Invictus on that final day having some judging challenges associated with some legless rope climbs and thrusters, and they just kept going and prevailing. But you yourself, CJ, were faced with a little bit of adversity where you had your son's Little League championship and then simultaneously needed to be at Granite Games. And you and I have discussed before this unique capacity to want to be two places at once. Can you share with people, what that experience was like, and what advice would you give to other parents out there that sometimes are conflicted in a similar manner?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, super tough decision. I mean, well, I shouldn't even say that. It wasn't a tough decision. It was a hard set of circumstances where my son's Little League team, which I've had the pleasure of coaching all season, spent 4 months with these 7 and 8-year-old boys, and they were in the playoffs. They kept winning. They kept advancing. So I kept pushing back my flight. So I was supposed to fly to Minnesota on a Wednesday. They had a game Wednesday night. So I pushed that flight to the Thursday morning. They ended up winning Wednesday night. I pushed that flight to Friday morning because they had a Thursday night game. They ended up winning Thursday night. And at that point, it was like, okay, we're going to the championship. So I'm not going to be able to be in Minnesota. Because as much as, Invictus, like any entrepreneur will tell you, like Invictus is like a child or family member to me. But it's not going to take precedence over my immediate family and my kids. And so it was an easy decision from that standpoint, but also the first time I've ever not been at a major competition with our athletes. And that said, the timing is perfect. This year, more than any other years, I really handed off to Holden Rethwell and Hunter Britt to say, hey, these are your teams, these are your athletes. I'm going to step back and I'm going to serve in a support role, make sure that you guys have all the resources you need. but there was no doubt, even before anything, those guys had the coaches passes. I was going out to support and be there to give the high fives and make sure everybody was excited to be there. But Holden and Hunter have just absolutely flourished in their role as head coaches, and it's just been really cool to see. It's been cool to see the environment that they've created in the gym, which is structured but fun. It's been cool to see the way the groups have rallied and really, coalesced because of the environment that's been created. Um, and it's been cool to see them constantly adjusting programming for a wide variety of athletes. And we've had athletes that have just absolutely like exploded, like exponential growth in the last, year. And so it's just been awesome to, kind of that next role for me as to be able to sit back and watch some of these guys that have been with us for 5-6 years, and just watch them absolutely thrive in their role as coaches. So as much as it was tough for me not to be there, and there's a little bit of ego involved, and like, oh man, I wanted to be out there with everybody. It was even better to be able to sit back and know that those guys were going to do a way better job than I could ever do, and just watch everybody thrive in that.
Totally, man. I really appreciate you sharing that, as that's one of those things that it's hard sometimes, especially when you've been the leader of the troops for so long. What kind of goes through your head as your family is kind of, your kids are getting older? There's certain things that you need to be present with. And, they say in the entrepreneurial world, like, you got to learn to delegate. You got to learn to delegate. But it's so hard because there's a certain set of circumstances and there's a certain level that you want to keep things at. And you've just done such a great job. And I can attest to this personally as well, where you do this great job of empowering others. Hey, you have this opportunity. Go take this opportunity and make it great. You have the resources. You have the support. Come here if you need it. And you've done such a cool job of that. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs that are struggling to kind of let go of that, and they're constantly needing to be a part of it, but then in reality, they're not allowing others to make those mistakes that they need to grow and evolve?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks. It's nice to hear, especially from somebody I've worked with for so many years, because it is tough. It's tough for me. It's tough for any entrepreneur. I think being an entrepreneur, at least in my experience, you constantly feel like you're failing. So it's always nice to hear that maybe we got it done a little bit better than I expected. But yeah, I think for me, it just comes down to principles of what matters, which is, this was never meant to be my business. This was meant to be a collective of the best coaches we could find, the best human beings we could find. And in order to keep that as the goal, you have to allow people to explore and create and figure out their best use. And there are times that it's been a miserable failure. And there have been times that it's just been absolutely, magical in finding and allowing somebody to find their success, right? Your podcast, Invictus University, which is blossoming under Kirsten, to watch Hunter and Holden just absolutely killing it, right? And Tino before them. It's just there's when you have good people, it's really easy just to say, hey, I'll shoulder some of the risk on this, and let's figure out how to make it happen for you. And that's really what we've always seen Invictus as. We want to be an incubator for great coaches. We want to create, more and more opportunity for our coaches and employees. We want to create more and more content and opportunity for athletes, subscribers, gym members to thrive. And if we can do that, that's all I set out to do, is create something where we can empower people to be better in whatever facet of life that they're looking for.
That's totally cool. And you've been somebody, you mentioned the term principles. And, what lessons are you kind of sharing with your son, Caden, as he's observing dad in this coach role, in this unique situation where you set out to be the coach of the team? And the phrasing, do what you say you're going to do and finish, come to mind when I think about, what kind of transpired over the course of this, season so far. What are those conversations kind of like with the up and coming generation? And are those things that travel in your headspace around, am I the example to, my son? Because they're going to emulate what you do more than what you say.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And honestly, I started Invictus because it's more about the mindset for me than the physicality of it even, right? It wasn't about teaching people how to squat and do pull-ups. It was more about teaching them that they were capable of doing whatever they wanted to do, that if they could set a goal, they'd keep running into obstacles, but eventually they'd overcome it. Your kids are your ultimate responsibility to teach those lessons. And so it's why I say, it wasn't a hard decision. Like it was a frustrating set of circumstances, but I was always going to be there for my kids. Because those are the lessons that we're trying to teach them every day, is that, hey, if you commit to something, you're going to finish it. You're going to work hard 100% of the time. Like you're not going to just, mail it in. And then, of course, with 7 and 8-year-old boys, I feel like it's such an important time to talk to them about, what they can control. And we talked on our baseball team, it was attitude, effort, and energy. Those were the only things we talked about. We never talked about wins, losses, strikeouts, hits, anything like that. And so it was really cool just to be able to share that with them over the course of the season. To constantly talk to them about, like, hey, you bring enthusiasm, you're going to play better. You control your emotions, you're going to play better. And so, can I tell you that every 7 and 8-year-old has it locked in and they're good to go for life? Of course not. But coaching is just repeating yourself over and over until the message finds a home. And so it's totally fun, totally worth it for me to be coaching those young kids.
Attitude, effort, and energy. I love it, man. As we wrap things up today, I do not want to skip over our 2 incredible Masters athletes that were in-house last weekend,
Yeah.
Sam Dancer and Jen Ryan. What comes to mind when you think about their journey so far and, how well they performed within their semifinals?
It's so cool to see. I think people are more familiar with Sam because Sam has been an individual athlete at the games. He's been a very public figure. He's obviously been on our team several times at the CrossFit Games, but I'm not sure anybody realized what he could do as an individual. And so when he set his mind, he told me earlier in the year, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna come out to San Diego in December, and I'm going to run at this Masters thing because I want to win the Masters." And I was like, okay, man, like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, he's got a young child, I wasn't sure what his level of commitment was going to be. And watching him flip the switch, watching him fully commit, watching his mindset change to, like, hey, I'm going to give everything I can. I'm going to give my full effort. I either do it or I don't. And what you saw is it absolutely paid off. Right? He absolutely dominated in the Open, in the quarterfinals, in the semifinals. And I know he's fired up and he's super focused and he's ready to go to games. So, that's kind of Sam's story. Jen Ryan is she is one of the greatest athletes that nobody knows about, or very few people know about, right? She's been on our teams. I mean, she's 42, 43 years old now. She's been on our teams as recently as last year, right? And so nobody's thought of her as this dominant Masters athlete. She didn't even put in all of her scores for last year's semifinals or age group qualifiers. So people didn't see her, where she would have finished first or second on the leaderboard last year. And the one year that she was going to go Masters was 2020. She finished first in the Open. Absolutely killed it, and then there was no opportunity. So she went out to Masters Fitness Collective and won not only her age group but would have won the age group below her too.
Wow.
And so this year when we talked about that decision of team, individual, and stuff, I had just shared with her, like, hey, you're so freaking good. You've been working so hard for so many years. Like, go out there, do it, allow yourself the spotlight. And she killed it in the Open, killed it in quarterfinals. I will tell you, semifinals workouts came out and she felt like the world was against her because she's, 125 pounds, those workouts, maybe future episode, I did not feel were super balanced for a
Mm-hmm.
smaller athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we talked about the mindset of like, hey, it doesn't matter what the workout is. Like, you put in all the work to raise your baselines. Like, you go out and execute. You do what you do best, and you'll be fine. And sure enough, she did. And they weren't her best workouts, but I think that's a huge confidence boost going into the CrossFit Games when you know that your nightmare workouts are behind you. They're probably not getting, she's probably not going to have to do 60 bench presses at
At her
125
body
again.
weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally, man. Yeah, she got through the wall ball workout too, which was like never ending wall balls, not super easy for a smaller athlete. Well, thank
Right.
you so much for your attitude, effort, and energy as we kind of recap Granite Games and Team Invictus finishing atop the podium, unconquerable, paving the way for next year's greatness, and our Masters athletes truly kicking ass in semifinals en route to Madison. For those of you listening, thank you for tuning in to another edition of Free Flow Friday. If you enjoyed my conversation with CJ, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Bye, guys. Thanks, CJ.
All right. Thanks, buddy.